Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is St. Louis on the Air.
I would say it like this, girl, you need to come on in out of the rain. That would be my challenge to, get yourself cleaned up and get your life together and treat yourself better. And she called me.
Like, this dude is like a real gentle soul. Like,
oddly enough, it started raining.
The regard that he has for human life.
And, her hair was wet, her face was wet, she was in tears.
What are you praying for these days? I'm Jonathan Ahl. St. Louis filmmaker Seth Ferranti will be debuting his documentary this July 17th as part of the St. Louis International Film Festival. The documentary covers the activism of a local pastor, Kenneth McKoy, known as the Pastor of the Streets. He goes out into the streets, and his nightlife ministry seeks to fight the epidemic of mental illness and drug addiction while actively interrupting the gun violence culture. Joining us to talk about this are our filmmaker, Seth Ferranti. Seth, thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here, man. Thank you.
And also the subject of your documentary, Reverend Kenneth McKoy. Reverend, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having
me. Reverend, I'd like to start with you. What compels you to do the work that you do, where you go out and meet people who need help where they are?
My faith and what I see when I read the Bible. Some personal experiences, losing very, very young members to gun violence, members of my church, young people who are baptized as children who I wound up burying them at 14 years of age, 17 years of age, all that sort of, I don't know if inspiration is the right word, but it compelled me to get involved in this kind of ministry.
A lot of people who are ministers find other ways that are less dangerous, to be quite frank, to practice their faith. Do you feel like more people should be called to your level of helping people who really need help where they are and when they need it, even sometimes when they resist your help?
Yes, I do. In a perfect world, I think that would be the case. I think that, when you talk about church culture, I think that there's just a way that the modern church addresses those kinds of things. And that's not to say that churches or denominations or faith communities, that's not to say they're not doing anything. I don't want to give that impression at all. But I think what's important is that we give of ourselves, that we make that human contact with people, and that's what I sought to do. That to make sure that the people that we minister to on the streets understood that we value them, we appreciate them. In fact, were it not for the grace of God, so goes a lot of us. So I think what we're missing, we're just sort of missing the personal connection. There's a lot of programs, there's a lot of foundations, there's tons of money, but I think we're lacking when it comes to people capital and people actually going out into the streets and engaging those individuals.
3 nights a week, you go out between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., is that correct? And
actually, at 11. We started
11. Okay.
When we first started, we did 10. Now we started at 11.
And the Fountain Park and Lewis Place neighborhoods?
Yes, that. And we've done a couple of other neighborhoods. We're looking forward to going south off 55 in the next few weeks.
How do you keep going? Because in a lot of the scenes that we see in the documentary, we see you trying to connect with people. Some of them are they're not having it. They're very upset. They don't want your help. There's gunshots that seem to ring out quite a bit. How do you keep going with that?
I really don't think about that. It's just sort of, I guess, if you're working, some days you're going to have bad days, some days you're going to have good days. I don't overreact to it. I mean, I'm more concerned about the safety of those persons who are with me, but I don't invest a lot in that emotionally, because it's the streets, and we're essentially trespassing. We're on somebody else's turf, so I sort of expect oftentimes the unexpected, and most of the time that nothing really happens most nights. But the nights that it does, it's just kind of off the chain those nights.
Seth Ferranti, how did you decide that Reverend McKoy would be a good subject for a documentary?
Yeah, well, I was doing a lot of stuff for Vice as a freelance journalist back in 2015, and we saw all these sweeping indictments in St. Louis, like these big gang indictments where they, roll up like 100 people. A lot of times when they're trying to basically, clear the areas of young men, or like they've done gentrified in a lot of different areas around this country. So I was coming in to kind of do something on these gang indictments and gentrification and the heroin epidemic for Vice article. And they, I was asking a whole bunch of people, like, who can I get on the north side? I was looking for some people to talk to. And through a lawyer friend, I got directed to the Reverend Kenneth McKoy. And once I met him, he invited me to come out to see what he was doing. And once I went out with him and I saw what he was doing, I was like, well, this is a story, that story, that idea I had before. So I actually did a piece for Vice. It was called The People Who Walk St. Louis's Most Dangerous Streets in 2015. And then, I just thought, like, what the Reverend Ken McKoy was doing was so, extraordinary. I mean, this dude's like a knight in shining armor. He's like a Superman, for his people. His biggest thing, his motto is, he said he loves his people more than he fears them. So, I mean, I just had such admiration for this dude that I just thought it was something bigger. I thought it was something that had to be on a bigger platform. And at the same time, I was making White Boy with Sean Reck and Transition Studios, which ended up on Starz. And then Netflix, the documentary about White Boy Rick. So I was looking for something that I could do local, that I didn't have a lot of funding for. And this story is right here. And we started walking with the Reverend Ken McKoy, and we just started recording. We started bringing 3 cameras out. And it was a long process, man. It was like 2 years of recording and then 3 years of editing. So, this has been kind of a labor of love, a passion of mine to tell this story, and finally, we're at the point where we're going to premiere, so it's pretty exciting.
Seth, you spent some time in prison on drug charges. You've been around people who are addicted, people who are hurting, people who are without a home. Were you prepared for what you saw when you were walking the streets with Nightlife Ministry, and was there anything that surprised you?
Yeah, I think I was prepared. I mean, I didn't grow up in the inner city, but I was around a lot of dudes in prison. African American young dudes who grew up in the inner city. So I had a pretty good idea of what to expect. Plus, my writing was kind of focused on like a lot of African American drug lords and stuff like that. But yeah, the biggest thing that surprised me was just the Reverend Ken McKoy, like his kind of. Like, this dude is like a real gentle soul. Like, he just goes out and he finds like these, whatever you want to call these people, stigmatized, marginalized, lost souls, people that are lost way. He just goes in and he finds them. And he's like, the way he treats them, you just got to, because a lot of people would not, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of people would not spit on these people if they were on fire. That's the way our society is today. Once you're marginalized, once you're stigmatized, once you're a drug addict, you're homeless, or even to a certain extent, you're a minority, people just have no regard for you. And just to see the regard that he has for human life, I mean, that's what surprised me the most.
Reverend, the documentary film shows you during one of your late night ministry walks, talking with a woman named Felicia from the summer of 2016. She talks about her addiction to drugs. Her own daughter, also addicted, had just overdosed, and you encouraged her to get help.
Right.
So I got a lot of stuff on my plate. And then me using drugs is not really helping, but it kind of, I don't know, when I do drugs, it's like it takes me away from all the problems that I face now.
She's exceptional, and as soon as she figures out just how exceptional she is, look out. Because I think she's going to be a huge blessing to a lot of young ladies who, who she's going to speak into their life in such a way that they're not going to come nowhere near this. No, I mean, listen, we just love her right now.
Meet them where they at.
Love her right now, and not going to love her anymore once she turns it around, just because we already love her.
That was Reverend Kenneth McKoy from the upcoming documentary Nightlife, which is premiering July 17th at the St. Louis International Film Festival. Reverend, you tried to get Felicia into rehab, but a clinic wasn't open that late at night. Days after that conversation, we heard that she died of an overdose. What was that experience like, and maybe how typical was that of what you face?
That's probably one of the most painful things I'd ever experienced in my life, because I had always said to Felicia, I would say it like this: girl, you need to come on in out of the rain. That would be my challenge to, get yourself cleaned up and get your life together and treat yourself better. And she called me and said that she was ready to make that change. And I was so excited. I think I had to take my daughter somewhere or do something, but I canceled that. And I went running down to the track, to Holdemont Tracks. They had had a little party for her in the alley. It was just the coolest thing. Somebody had got her some makeup. She had made herself up. And I took her to the bread company. We ate at the bread company, and she thought that it was a 5-star restaurant. Her mind was just blown by it. And we went back. I don't know if I should name the facility, but a lot of these facilities are just overwhelmed. They're understaffed, underfunded, the whole 9 yards. So we went to this one facility, and they told us to leave and come back over a certain period of time. And then when we came back, they told us that they didn't have a bed for her. And she stood outside that facility, and she wept. And I was absolutely heartbroken. And it was one of the most difficult things I'd ever done, to have to take her back to the Holdemont Tracks. And oddly enough, it started raining. And, her hair was wet, her face was wet, she was in tears. And it was just it was horrible to have to drop her off back into the environment that she thought that she had hoped that she would escape that night. And when I got word that she passed, it was equally devastating. To be perfectly honest with you, after that, I really thought about discontinuing the ministry, because that kind of thing was just too painful. And I really felt responsible for it, because, I had challenged her. And she stepped up to the plate, met the challenge, and I just felt like I didn't deliver. And I still struggle with that today. So it was very painful.
You said you thought about leaving. What made you change your mind?
I kind of just forced myself to man, you just need to keep doing this. There are other Felicias out there. You just need to keep doing this. It was a difficult thing. I think I sort of walked around out there for weeks with my head in the game, but not my heart, because I was still wrestling with whether or not what I was doing was it worthwhile, was it effective, all those kinds of things. I just really second guessed myself. So it was a difficult process, but I've still not gotten over that. But I'm at a better place with it. Let me just say that.
I don't want to dwell just on the things that have gone not the way you would have liked. Can you tell me about someone that you helped and that gives you joy and helps fuel you to keep going?
Yes, there are quite a few people. There's a young lady who said she wanted some help, but she was embarrassed because she hadn't had a bath like in a week or something like that. And she said, Reverend, you just don't know how difficult it is, I'm ashamed of myself. And, and people do deal with all that shame. And I was able to introduce her to some people who got in her hotel room. She got a bath and got herself together, went to some rehab, and she's doing all right now. I still see her from time to time. And another young man that we met earlier on who was on his way to kill someone. And he was in tears. And we prayed with this young guy. He went by a nickname. I'm not going to call his name, but we prayed with him. And he abruptly he ended the prayer because he just because I held his hand and he just dropped his hand. And that's when he told us that he was going to go kill this person. And so my son had just gotten shot, maybe, 2 weeks prior to that. So I saw my son in him, and I just grabbed him and hugged him. And he was, let me go, OG, let me go, OG. I said, no, I just want to ask you a few questions. Just want to talk to you for a minute. I said, hey, man, do you have any kids? He said, yes. Boy or girl? He said, I have a son. I said, what is your son going to do if you go over here and shoot this guy and wind up spending the balance of your life in prison? Or worse, you go over here and get shot. What are you going to do? And I hugged him, and he cried, and I walked the brother. We walked the brother home. I think somebody got the gun from him. And I saw him, this was during the summer, I saw him during that winter, and I've seen him a couple of times since, and he is doing quite well. So that really inspires me. Doesn't happen enough, but that was really, really, really inspiring. I needed that moment just as bad as he did, if not more.
Seth Ferranti, when people see your documentary, what do you hope that they come away with?
Yeah, I think this doc, it's a call to action, because if you see what the Reverend Kim McKoy is doing, what he's doing is not for everybody, but if more people did it, if more people went and met people where they're at, if we stop stigmatizing, if we stop marginalizing, if we stop stereotyping people, these people are just, they're caught up in it, they need help. Some of them, maybe they don't want help right now, but if that helps there, like the Reverend Kim McKoy is trying, to extend that to them, think how many lives you can save, man. It's just, you can't place a value on human life. So even one life saved is invaluable. And so if you had more people kind of doing this stuff, meeting people where they're at, I just like this model that he's doing. And also what I want this film to accomplish is I want the Reverend Kim McKoy. He's had a lot of news articles. He's been recognized nationally, but this dude needs to go out and speak his inspirational message, and tell people why he's doing, what made him do it. This can inspire people if he goes and tells his story of what he's done with nightlife and why he did it. This guy should be speaking all over the nation, inspiring, tons of people to do different things, whatever it is. They don't have to do what he did, but, I just think this film is kind of a calling card, for him and who he is and what he's about and what he's accomplished and what he can still accomplish, for the betterment of all people.
Reverend McKoy, if it's not too personal a question, I wonder if we could close with, what are you praying for most these days?
I think Seth nailed it. I would like to see more people willing to give of themselves, and treat people, despite their station in life, like they're part of the human family, like they're part of God's creation. It's my constant prayer. Every time I drive by and I see a homeless person or an addicted person or some young brother that's lost or some young sister that's lost, I'm vigilant when it comes to that, and that's basically where my where my prayers are most of the time.
Reverend Kenneth McKoy, founder of Nightlife Ministry and pastor at the Progressive AME Zion Church. Reverend, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Seth Ferranti is a St. Louis filmmaker. The film is Nightlife, and it will premiere July 17th as part of the St. Louis International Film Festival. Seth, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
This episode was produced by Danny Wysentowski.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr. Our production intern is Avery Rogers. Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Our podcast proudly supports St. Louis artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.